the sense of belonging.
Right.
Yeah, the sense of belonging. This is why your book. I wanted to go into your book now because your book talks about the responsibility that we all play a game with with creating good readers. When you first started to write this book, what was the first thing that came into your mind? What was that seed that was planted in your head?
When I learned that 70% of our students were reading below proficiency level, that bothered me. That sent I I was angry. I was angry because that was in 2020 and I was angry. And when I heard, because when you're going through your dissertation, I interviewed so many people and they said the same thing, that yeah, their students can't read. And I'm saying to myself, why is that okay?
Hmm.
If you were in corporate America and you only had 30% sales, you probably get fired. It'll be a big thing. So why is it acceptable in education that we have 70% of our students who can't read? And we know that by third grade, if they're not reading by third grade, up until third grade, we are learning to read. After that, you you read to learn, right? It's going to be hard for you to read to learn if you can't read. How are you going to access the content in science and math and social studies if you can't read? And so we see behaviors escalating by third grade. We see disengagement in school by third grade because our students know what they can do and what they can't do. And so if they are struggling to read, they can't show their friends. So what do?
Right.
They act out.
Hmm.
They act out so the teacher can send them to the principal's office right around the time that it's time for reading so that they don't have to show their friends that they can't read. And so if we get more of that, then we get disengagement. We get them sent to the principal's office. They get left back. They have, we call them names. We put labels on them. We disengage with them. We we trample on their self-image, their self-concept, their very being. And we totally destroy them at third grade. And that bothered me. And so I wrote the book thinking that if I can get a message out to the community, to the village, that says we need three things. We need to look at children and what happens to children from 0 to 5. That matters. That's foundational. And then if we can look at what's happening in a classroom, if we can bring research to practice, because many of our teachers don't know the science of reading, so they can't teach what they don't know. So if we can look at what's happening from K to 3, and then if we look at what's happening, what do our children have access to, and what kind of opportunities do they have outside of the school? If we look at those three things and we correct them, that's a game changer. And so I needed to write the book that wasn't supposed to be a book that became a book. I needed to write it so that we have information in one place that will grow with families, that they can take to their church, to their doctor, to their school community and say, "Hey, how are we teaching reading? I just need to know, what can I do? What can you do? What can you do to build these readers?" Because I think that they don't know. Not every we're not all educators. And so if you don't know, you think that what you're doing is okay,
Right.
but you're not building a foundation for reading to occur and you don't even know it.
How often is it due to like the parents not implementing it at home, and how often is it maybe that the student is suffering from dyslexia or a short attention span, or is it just and like an unwillingness or a lack of interest in reading?
It could be all of the above, right?
Mhm.
So, but children with dyslexia can learn to read. We
Right.
just we have to pinpoint,
Right.
which is why those 5 skills. There's Scarborough's reading rope, and it breaks down those skills. And so when you do assessment, you can pinpoint exactly where the child is strong and where they're weak, and then you build those skills that are weak. Right? What we tend to do is we rely on our teaching methods, and we start where we want to start instead of starting where children need to be. We don't meet children where they are. We just start where we feel comfortable, right? And so we have to build capacity, right, to understand where children are. And that comes with assessment, right? You cannot teach a child if you don't know where they are.
Mhm.
And so we don't know if it's dyslexia until we get into the weeds, right? Then we bring in our child study team, right? We don't know if it's a lack of interest until we get to know students. It goes back to somebody who said building relationships. You can't teach a child if you don't have a relationship with them. And children won't learn from adults if they don't like you.
Mhm.
And so you have to build relationships. Find out if it is something that I just don't have an interest in reading. And we as adults have to figure out, because we know we know that they need reading. So how do we backdoor it?
Mhm.
Put our heads together. Let's figure this out.
Right. Right.
We can't let them be.
Yeah.
Slip through the
Yeah.
cracks.
And
Right.
and to your point, remember you were talking about why we create a test. And like Dr. Blanton is saying, it's an assessment of where you are. That's what tests should be really used for. Oh, you ignored 25%? Okay, cool. Let's go back and refresh. What is it that we missed? Where we didn't connect? This is where I do think we make a critical mistake, Dr. Blanton.
And we don't give second chances.
Yes.
We don't
Very
give
good.
second chances. If and I think you went, I don't want to gloss over the fact that you talked about grades, right? So when you think about it, you get a child, your student, and they come home and they have their grades, right? And they have, let's just say they have a C. You're like, okay, they have a C. Well, what goes into that C? 5%, 10% of, did you wear your uniform? Attendance. Okay, you came to school. That's another 5 or 10% of your grade. You participated. That's another 5 or 10% of your grade. You brought in your homework. That's another 5 or 10%. So is the C the C? Is the C, does the C denotes mastery in the skill? So if it's math or if it's ELA, can my child read? Because I don't know, because all this other stuff is before it. Is that C a C? Does it mean that my child is reading on a C level, or does it mean that my child is on a D level, that they're not reading, but it's a mask with all the other stuff that's been talked about?
Yeah.
And so we've got to change, because our school system is set up. Um, it's not set up for second chances.
Yeah.
If you bomb out on a test, okay, you might have had a bad day or whatever. Put some criteria in place. You got to do all the homework. You got to do all of the pre stuff or whatever. Let's take it again. Let's see how you do. I don't think that it was so much of a change. We've always had a reading problem. There's always been a reading problem, right? COVID did not unveil this great big reading problem. COVID unveiled the access and accessibility, right? That woke us up. But we've always had a problem in this country with reading, going back to anti-literacy laws. So I just want to preface what I'm about to say with the fact that our brains were not wired to read. We had to teach it to read, right? It does this great thing. It rewires itself, right, to form pathways for reading to develop. A lot of people don't understand that. It's very different than language. Language, you can put a child in a room full of people who are speaking and they will speak. You don't have to teach them how to right? That is not going to happen for reading. You cannot sit someone in a room full of people who are reading, whether they're reading out loud or silently. It's not going to happen. You have to teach it to read, right? That starts very early. What we think is reading starts in kindergarten, and then we build these habits in kindergarten. And if we think that, we're 5 years already behind, right? Reading starts really at the moment of conception. How? Well, all of the stuff that mom eats, all of the environmental pressures and stress impacts the developing brain. Reading is all about the brain. The brain is the main character, right? And so if we understand that, then we have a point of reference. And so how do we build stamina, right? Because in order to learn to read and read well, you have to build stamina. I'm like, this is a race, right? Not for the quick athlete, but it's endurance. And it took us years, decades to get here. My book has only been out since August. It's not going to take months for us to get out. And so people have to come to the point where I came to and say, okay, I reflected. Now I see, and now I'm going to do better. When you know better, you do better.